6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I got it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
Making review. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to episode 17 of Rank and Review. Wink, wink. In this episode, my friend G and I are going to look at 6 movies that know that their audience have seen a lot of horror movies. Self-aware horror comedy. As usual, I should warn everyone in advance that there will be spoilers and there will be some coarse language. I am your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, and thank you so much for listening to Rank and Review. So, episode 17 of Rank and Review. I'm in my friend G's basement, and this has been a long time coming, this episode. The theme is Wink Wink. It's kind of horror comedy redux, but I think most of these movies are aware of, horror movies, and aware that people who are watching them have probably watched a lot of horror movies and use that to an advantage in one way or the other. I also wanted to pick a bunch of movies that were not too vicious of horror movies, or too bloody, or too hardcore, as they would say, because I know that G's not a huge horror movie fan as a rule. Yeah. So I think there's some genuinely scary stuff in these bunch of movies.
Absolutely,
but for the most part, I think, there is comedy tinged throughout it. So Gareth, G.
Yeah.
Gareth?
G is fine.
G is good.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for doing my show, and thank you for putting up with 6 movies.
Oh, it was. It turned out to be it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything that stood out as particularly awful, or it wasn't a chore necessarily.
No. I have to say I'm going to end up liking these 6 movies, and so much so that I did watch all of them twice, and some of them more than that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey. You're not necessarily a convert.
Do I win something for that?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. We haven't ranked them yet.
Okay.
But let's just list off the movies that we're going to talk about today.
Let's do that.
I have, from the middle of the 80s, Night of the Creeps, written and directed by Fred Decker, who would go on to direct The Monster Squad, RoboCop 3, and that is all. We have Beetlejuice, which was written and at least directed by Tim Burton.
Yes.
And
Michael McDowell was the writer.
Thank you.
No problem.
See, G's on point. And of course, Tim Burton went on to direct many, many, many movies, and maybe more than he should have. Who knows? We have the sort of 90s defining Wes Craven directed Scream.
Yes.
We have Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which was shot in Alberta.
Yep.
Just a few hours drive from here.
Exactly. Shout out.
We have the British alien invasion flick Attack the Block, and we have Cabin in the Woods from Joss Whedon and director Drew Goddard.
I can actually hear faint applause right now.
Yay! I think it's actually a really strong bunch of movies, which makes it actually much harder to rank them, I find, generally.
I agonized over it, so, I found it very difficult. I did. They were enjoyable all for different reasons, but, yeah.
Yeah, I do think that most of these exploit the fact that, like I said, if you've watched a lot of these movies, there's familiar elements to them, and they sort of will play to your hand a little bit. They know what you expect to see, so they'll either do that in a creative way, or they know what you expect to see, so they'll do something else. As we've discussed, I think maybe the loosest one in this group is perhaps Beetlejuice.
I would have to say, yeah.
But, or maybe Attack the Block. Attack the Block is fairly straight. There's not a lot of tongue-in-cheekness to it. It's funny, but it's not self-referential necessarily.
Not as much as the others, but it has an awareness of itself, I think.
Yeah, and I think it does fit well on this list.
Indeed.
So is there anything you want to say before we jump in and start ranking and reviewing these guys?
No, I don't think so. Oh. I'm just happy to begin.
Let's do it.
Long-time listener, first-time participant.
Yes. G test drives my rough cuts of these episodes, the poor bastards. Let's do this.
Indeed.
The night of the fall is finally here. For Chris, Cindy, and JC. It's going to be the best night of their lives. But tonight is also the night of the creeps. From a world unknown comes a nightmare unimagined. First, they are under you, around you, on you, and then inside you.
They get in through your mouth, and you walk around while they incubate, even if you're dead.
Night of the Creeps. Actually, when I gave you this list of movies, this was the one movie that I was kind of leery that I thought maybe you might not connect with.
Yeah.
I saw it at a young age, and I think that sometimes helps a lot, especially with these really heavily 80s movies.
Understandably, yeah.
And because you're not as into the horror genre, maybe some of the familiar horror tropes would not speak to you the way they did to me, right?
Fair enough, yeah.
That said, I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about this movie almost uniformly. I mean, it's definitely a movie of its time, but I can take it. What did you think of Night of the Creeps?
See, I'm perfectly okay with the time that it was made, and I have no problem adjusting to that when I'm watching a movie, so thankfully that didn't affect me very much at all. And I was totally surprised by this movie. I didn't know what to expect going in, to be honest. I wasn't sure, I had some build-up as to the craziness that I was about to experience, but no idea that it was going to be executed the way it was. And I just thought it was so much funnier and faster and ridiculous than I could possibly have expected or anticipated. That it was just pure joy the whole time, as it turns out. So I was so pleasantly surprised.
The thing is that the movie has everything.
It does.
And by everything, within the first 20, or not even 20 minutes, say 10 minutes, you've got aliens, you've got a psycho killer with an axe.
That's right.
And you've got little sort of leechy space worms that are invading people's brains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not done yet.
But wait.
And the way it jumps around, we've got sort of relatively well-realized space sci-fi special effects for the 80s, and then we've got a black and white sequence set in, the 50s.
Sure.
Which is, to period. And then we jump ahead 30 years to what was at the time contemporary times for when the movie was made, but what is now another sort of hilarious, nostalgic era.
Of course.
The 80s.
Well, yeah, no, it's got, the tight jeans and the high hair, and it's got everything that an 80s movie needs. And it's based on a college campus.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got your sorority girls, you've got your nerds and your jocks, and it's awesome.
Yeah. A lot of types, a lot of gratuitous boobery.
Oh. Well, which no 80s movie can be without. If it was a college-age movie.
It was requisite for the movie.
Absolutely.
And then, bring on the zombies and bring on,
Exactly.
the action sequences. So, the story, I guess, centers on, once we get through the first couple of chapters, setting up the aliens that land to Earth and get inside this guy's head, and he is then put into some sort of cryogenic type of stasis state.
As the 50s would interpret, yes.
And then our two heroes, a couple of college kids who are desperately trying to get into a really horrible sorority.
Yeah. Like a really ugly sorority.
Like,
actually.
on its face, I don't know why I don't understand. I guess Jason Lively's character, our lead, is sort of wanting to impress a girl.
Yes.
And he thinks that hanging out with a bunch of these douchebags will somehow endear him to her.
Well, they are the cool kids. I mean, the jock assholes, but those were the popular characters.
But as a pledge prank, they are asked to produce a body and put it on the steps of the house of some competing.
I haven't heard that one among pledge pranks, but
that's
wow.
pretty extreme.
That's out there.
So
props to anybody who did pull that off.
Again, this is such a ridiculous thing. The fact that they even do it, we shouldn't like these guys. Although I think we kind of do.
A little bit, yeah. I mean,
our two leads, played by Jason Lively and Steve Marshall, they're Chris and JC.
Mm-hmm.
They're
lovable rogues.
Yeah. They, by pure fate and happenstance, managed to stumble upon the same body that was infected by the alien slugs.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't quite manage to get it out on the campus where they need it to be, but they they make a mess in a lab and they flee.
Yes,
essentially is what
yes,
happens.
Yes.
And this starts a chain of events that is bad news for basically, almost everybody at this college campus.
Yes.
You wanted to talk about Tom Atkins.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about Tom Atkins, enter Detective Ray Cameron, who we actually saw earlier in the prologue.
As a young beat cop in the
right.
1950s.
Flatfoot.
Yes, it was his lady love was killed by a psycho killer.
Indeed.
The very same night that the alien plague was dropped to the light. It was a busy night for them.
That's a rough shift. Wow. I don't envy his character. That's a lot to go through in one night, and then to suddenly get the call, and he is always called before he enters every scene, of course.
Yes,
because he has to respond with his big line. That's like the selling line of the whole movie. His "Thrill me,
thrill me, yes,
thrill me."
We go back to this. He keeps asking people to thrill him because he seems like a fairly unhappy fellow.
Wow.
This is not your standard Columbo type of character here, where he's a little rough around the edges. This guy's full on suicidal.
Yeah, no,
he's just not happy with his lot.
He's pretty bent out of shape.
And he's sort of got that been there, done that, I've seen everything kind of mentality.
Yeah,
and this turns out to be kind of hubristic because I don't think the case that he now encounters is anything that he's seen before. Although it does have ties to his past.
Bizarre the way things tie together.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is the relationship, I think, between Jason Lively and the Steve Marshall character. JC, his best buddy, is like on crutches.
Yes.
And either does not see himself as a potential partner for anyone, or is living completely vicariously through his friend.
Yes.
Or possibly is in love with his friend.
Yeah, it's one of those two.
We're not sure exactly what it's being played for, but it's sort of a bromance relationship before bromance were somewhat popularized lately.
Well, I mean, it's hard to like have all those comic scenes without having a buddy there too. I mean, they are trying to do a lot of setup, knockdown 80s comedy. Dialogue in every scene, so it's just I think sometimes easier to have a buddy there. I think
it's a fine line to walk too, because they take their sort of relationship scenes fairly seriously, and the movie is kind of goofy. So the fact that so much attention is paid to their relationship is kind of an interesting. I mean, I'm not going to say distracting. It's just an interesting angle that's explored in the movie.
Well, I mean, I guess I have to agree. I managed to be so shocked by what was going on otherwise from their relationship that I largely forget the intimacy that they share in those scenes,
Yes.
obviously. But,
Well, going back to the horror aspect of the film, too, in the lab, the scientist that was working in the lab is attacked by the corpse.
Yes.
And the actor who played that, I believe, is David Paymer,
correct.
who would go on to great things
Mm-hmm.
and actually go on to not directly shit talk this movie, but shit talk this movie, because he would complain later in his career that when things started out, he was always that guy who got killed in the first reel of the horror movie, which is what he is here, but he's completely adequate in it. And I'd just like to say, Mr. Paymer, if I was in this movie, I would be very proud of it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm assuming it has to have some sort of cult following, I would think, because this is too much fun, and it was. I mean, despite the fact that Fred Dekker went on to do RoboCop 3, Monster Squad, this is clearly he loved the genre as a kid growing up, and he clearly watched them during the 50s and 60s, and when his time came, he took his shot.
Yeah.
And I like that about the movie, too. I think it's just a lot of fun for that reason. He just embraces it in all its B glory.
Yeah, I don't know how much traction it got right away. I think this is some sort of a cult movie that was found and caught up with. But there was so many great, crazy, comedy, violent horror movies coming out in the 80s. It was an embarrassment of riches that a movie this good actually could almost slip by unnoticed.
Well,
but yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. We keep on getting sidetracked, but
sorry, yeah.
No, the basic script, once infected by this thing, these brain bugs grow inside your head until your head explodes
with
brain bugs,
right,
and
yeah.
then those brain bugs still got more heads to invade.
Absolutely.
And once you have a bug in your brain, you act very zombie-like, which Larry approves of.
Yes, 2 thumbs up for zombies.
But we also find out that they're able to get into the bodies that are buried. For instance, the body of the serial killer, who, spoilers, Tom Aikens had killed as revenge for the death of his love back in the day, and buried under one of the houses. Yes. One of my favorite scenes that I remember seeing like so many movies, I saw this too young. I remember being quite terrified by the sequence where the skeleton axes its way out of the floorboards of the house matron's living room. That was pretty scary when you were like 11 or 12 or whatever old I was when I saw this movie.
Understandably, yeah. No, I can see how that would frighten a young fella.
So we're getting all of these different things thrown at us. Leeches, zombies, awkward sort of romantic comedy angle between Jason Lively and this woman he's romancing, played by Jill Whitlow.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
She went on to do other
things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know her in anything beyond this. And this was sort of one of the last things I remember seeing Jason Lively in. He played Rusty in one of the Vacation movies. I believe the European, I want to say maybe.
That sounds right. It's been so long, but yeah, no, that sounds right.
There's so much going on in this movie, and there's so much good going on, and it's keeping a lot of balls in the air. It's funny, but it is also still sort of scary. There's some good action set pieces to it.
Yes.
It's really, I mean, I don't have a lot negative to say about it. There is some in-your-face 80ness to it, like, especially I find with the guys from the sorority house.
Yes. Yes.
They just, like, they're so 80s, it hurts. It's like, it's hilarious.
But these characters are, like, ubiquitous with 80s movies.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's perfectly fine. I accept that.
And they're playing the college douchebag types adequately enough.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm sure it was a real stretch for all of them. It was...
Yeah.
No, but
so much so that when one of them gets turned, his ex-girlfriend doesn't even notice.
Exactly.
That he's a zombie.
He's a zombie because he remains just silent and douchey towards her. It's great, actually.
If you're halfway into horror movies or you're into comedies, I think this is worth a look. It is quite violent, and it is a genre-bending, fun horror comedy. So if that's your bag, I say by all means,
Yeah.
dip right into Night of the Creeps.
Oh, I think I can endorse this movie for anybody who just enjoys something like silly and lighthearted as well. I mean, it's despite the fact that yes, there are some scary moments, and I think probably the scariest being right out of the gate. Again, anytime somebody is murdered, that's upsetting.
And great practical 80s special effects, too. I remember there's a scene with a little zombie cat that I thought was kind of great, well done.
Yes.
And another great zombie versus lawnmower sequence. Lest we think Dead Alive was the first and only zombie movie that employed a lawnmower against a room full of zombies. No. Night of the Creeps got there first, people.
It's true.
Is there anything else you want to say about Night of the Creeps?
I don't think so. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Agreed.
From the director of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Adam and Barbara are ghosts.
What's the good of being a ghost if you can't frighten people away?
Their house is being haunted by the living,
Maybe the house could use a little remodeling.
and they can't scare them into leaving.
They said it's a little late to be neurotic.
So they're calling on Beetlejuice,
Beetlejuice!
who's no ordinary ghost.
You don't want his help.
Can you be scary?
What do you think of this?
Now, the party's over.
You want somebody out of the house? I want to get somebody out of your house.
But the fun has just begun.
It's showtime.
So there once was a ghost named Beetlejuice. I saw Beetlejuice several times in the theater when I was a kid.
In the theater?
Yeah.
Lucky you.
I think it was still playing shortly after I'd moved to Saskatchewan. And I had lots of free time, and my parents were being very generous with me. I had a lot of pocket money. But it just kept on playing in the theater, and I kept on going to see it.
1988, full of piss and vinegar.
So I would go to movies by myself, like all popular boys would.
Well, yeah.
So I'm a big fan of it, and I, like a lot of people, couldn't wait to see, where Tim Burton would go.
And the places he's gone.
Oh, the places he's gone. Up, down, and everywhere in between.
Really? Everywhere in between?
every creepy corner of the attic has been explored.
Well, yes.
I think that this is one of my personal favorites of Tim Burton's films, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The level of creativity in it and the level of love put into it is huge. And I like that they use stop motion animation
Absolutely.
in it. I mean, that's the kind of animation that doesn't fool anyone. I don't think you believe what you're seeing is real, but it looks awesome in its own way. And if you're going to follow this wacky movie to all of the absurd corners that it leads you anyway, why not? Why not the claymation?
Well, and I think Tim Burton was really starting to discover his aesthetic with this movie in a lot of ways. Like,
this palette would be returned to again and again.
And it just has gotten more and more refined as his movies have gone along. So.
And it's not even the world of the small town I would be talking about here. It's like... It's not even the world of the small town that I'd be talking about. It's the world of the model of the small town that Alec Baldwin's character has made, where everything doesn't necessarily look perfectly real. In fact, there's I think a deliberate artifice to everything.
Most definitely.
But it's consistent throughout the film, so you go with it. He did much similar with the portrayal of suburbia in Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
It wasn't real, but it was sort of a consistent vision,
and
a heightened version of things.
And yeah, that's just it. When he dives into that aesthetic, and you have to go in sort of neck deep with him, and that makes it easier to sort of let the bad animation go.
Yeah.
It's part of the world.
And this story really agrees with him. This is definitely a world that he was sort of a good person to be leading the reins to. Basically, the plot is that the Maitlands, a very sugary sweet small town couple, have an unfortunate accident and they drown, and they come back as ghosts to live in their house, and they find that they have 100 years to enjoy their house and each other. because they live good lives, I guess, and because of all the hard work that they've done in the house.
That's right.
And that a lot of the first act of the movie is them sort of adjusting to being ghosts.
Yes.
And we kind of explore the afterlife in a way that few films do, and that I quite like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's done in kind of a innocent way, I guess. It's approached with pretty wide eyes, and I think that's kind of nice. There's just I don't know, they're both really timid about the entire experience, and so it breaks you in and makes it accessible to younger people, I think, too.
They're just starting to get a handle on the new rules of the world. You can't leave your house or else you end up on Mars. I think was it Mars, where there's a bunch of sandworms that chase you?
Yes.
And that time there travels differently. When you're there for only a few seconds, several hours go by on... It's craziness, things like that. All is going well for the Maitlands. They're learning to be ghosts. They're adapting to their new lives. And then Catherine O'Hara, Jeffrey Jones, Winona Ryder show up to remodel and destroy their quaint small town environment. Catherine O'Hara brings her personal assistant Otho. I don't know that actor's name. He actually showed up in Heathers, which I just talked about recently with Natara.
Oh, yeah.
Glenn Shaddix plays Otho.
Otho.
The comical interior design sort of... You get the idea that he makes his entire existence just somehow sucking money out of the Catherine O'Hara character.
Well,
whatever she needs, he is for her, be it interior design or be it a psychic or a paint, whatever she needs.
He's fabulous enough to be everything.
Yes, exactly. And Jeffrey Jones has moved the family out to the country because he needs to relax. I don't know if he had some sort of heart event or some sort of health issue that has compelled this to come along, but obviously you get the idea that relaxing doesn't come easily to him. Especially being married to this complete crazy person, Catherine O'Hara, with her bizarre artwork and her control issues, and his goth daughter.
Yes.
Played by Winona Ryder, also from Heathers.
Oh, wow.
The Maitlands aren't liking these new people in their house at all.
Of course not.
Well, they have this book for the recently deceased, which gets them in touch with their social worker, which introduces another interesting wrinkle of the movie. If you kill yourself, we learn, you become basically a government employee in the afterlife. Right. Your job basically is to help other people get through the experience of transition between life and afterlife. Another sort of interesting and dark wrinkle. And they are also introduced to this character who won't say his name, but says, if you say that name 3 times, I'll show up. And he calls himself a bioexorcist. And he can get rid of troublesome humans. This is like an exterminator of humans.
That's right.
This is, of course, Beetlejuice, played quite memorably by Michael Keaton.
Undeniably, yeah.
So they're told that they can try and haunt the place themselves, or they have the option to hire Beetlejuice or presumably someone else to do the job for them.
Well, yeah.
All of this sort of speaks to the level of imagination that has been put into this movie.
No kidding.
Sandworms in space and, suicidal government workers and...
well, your lead character is a self-proclaimed bioexorcist.
Yes.
Who works for ghost people in order to get rid of their human... nuisances?
Exactly, like a human exterminator.
Well, yes.
It's also interesting that for some reason he lives in the model that Alec Baldwin's character has created of his small town. It seems like the Beetlejuice spirit has somehow been banished into this model for some reason. It's also interesting to me to see Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis playing the Maitlands. Alec Baldwin especially playing such like a milquetoast sort of character.
Oh yeah.
He's not a badass. He's not gruff Alec Baldwin at all.
Not in the least.
You don't imagine that violence even occurs to this character at all. He's just a completely mellow fellow.
Yeah, no, he's a sensitive guy. I can see why Gina Davis ended up with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as such, because they're so nice, they're not very good at being ghosts.
No.
They don't know how to scare these people. No. They seem to forget that these people can't see them, so they do all these absurd things to themselves to try and scare them off.
Right, yes. enter some of the claymation.
Absolutely. If I have complaints about Beetlejuice, I mean, and I have to look pretty hard to find them. I mean, if I'm honest, the ending of the movie doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
Not really.
But if I'm honest, I don't really care that it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's this one's about the ride.
It is. You're not going to know what's around the next corner in this movie.
No.
You were talking about a memorable dance sequence in the movie.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, it's Hera Belafonte.
Yeah.
And they're sitting around their dining table, and Ortho's there trying to basically conduct the an exorcism of the house.
Yes.
Getting rid of these ghosts, and instead becomes possessed by Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice.
The entire dinner party is basically does a song and dance routine in that one sequence to
the Banana Boat song.
The Banana Boat song.
Yes.
And to the horror of Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, yes. So this does not scare them away. This, in fact, makes them more interested.
That's right.
They start courting investors. They start trying to find ways. We have proof of the afterlife.
Absolutely.
And this gets exacerbated because Otho gets his hands on the book for the recently deceased.
Right. That's right. They lose their handbook to Otho.
They do sort of befriend and quickly bond with the Winona Ryder character.
The goth girl, really?
Yeah. Who is able to see them for some reason, because she herself is strange and unusual.
That's
as
right.
She says. I've been going on and on. Please, what are your...
Oh, gosh, what can I say? I mean, I think for me, Beetlejuice will always have a special place for me in the Tim Burton catalog. I think... in many ways, it reminds me of why I liked his movies in the first place. And largely because of the performances that he got from actors other than the ones that he uses every time now.
I do think it actually holds up quite well, both in the sort of visual standpoint and like it doesn't feel like a really 80s movies necessarily. I've seen it a lot of times, and I enjoyed watching it again for this. Like I didn't... It wears well. It bears repeat viewing well, which I also think says something about it.
Well, yeah, that's a part of being a timeless movie, or being able to just exist in all the time slots, is that you don't marry yourself to one time or another. And it's not an 80s movie at all, but it's not an anytime movie. And I think, again, claymation actually gives you that leeway in some ways. As soon as you start using digital images, the quality changes time and time again. Claymation really hasn't changed at all, so...
And then there's the small town vibe, right? We got a small town vibe. It feels weirdly 50s just because of especially the Gina Davis and like I say, the Alec Baldwin characters.
Absolutely.
They could be living in Maybury for all we
Most
know.
definitely.
And that adds sort of to a timeless quality of it. It's a lot of fun, and it's fairly light. I think it's also the least horror movie of all of these. There might be a couple of doom moments, and it does deal with ghosts in the afterlife, but it's a very soft touch, and it wants to charm you. It doesn't want to scare you.
Absolutely.
And it does charm you.
It does. It's fun to watch, and I think it's very accessible for a younger audience in that way too.
And we've got to give Michael Keaton his due here, too. Michael Keaton was like a super, super hot actor at this time. He was Batman, and for a while there he was just the movie star, the go-to movie star. But he also had the goods.
Yes.
I don't think this would be the same if, say, Johnny Depp played Beetlejuice. I really think that Michael Keaton really brought some sort of... his style and energy really added something to the movie.
Absolutely. This is a real high point for him, or for me, in terms of his movieography.
And as much as his name is the title of the movie, he is a supporting player. He's sort of a villain / supporting player.
Yeah.
There's a couple times where he actually directly refers to the audience. He also breaks the wall a little bit. Yeah. I don't know if that's a choice that I would have made, but it wasn't so distracting as to hurt the movie for me.
Yeah, well, it always had that sort of... the movie never had a sense of being grounded in any kind of reality anyway. So, I mean, if he wants to cheat to the audience on occasion, I suppose, why not? I mean, he's capable of communicating with both sides of the known world in this universe. I mean, he's sort of playing both sides of the fence in some ways. I think he knows how to get to the humans in the way that our ghost heroes can't. So,
and his energy sort of helps fly over the softer edges of the script. Like, for some reason, he needs to get married to be unbanished, and the whole business, the somewhat sloppy but visually spectacular third act of the movie where the Maitlands are being exorcised, which is, as we have heard, death for the dead. If you get exorcised, then you're a lost soul, which is like bad
right.
news.
Yeah.
And the whole climax of the movie revolves around that. And then at some point, Gina Davis's ghost rides in on top of one of these worms and eats Beetlejuice. I don't know exactly what happened there. And it sort of worked against what we'd seen before, but like I said, this is not a movie that asks you to think too deeply about some of these things.
Well, yeah, no, it's best not to. I mean, that she could somehow bridge between the two worlds, the Mars world and the ghost world, and somehow break through into the human world from the Mars world. I mean,
either a reel of the film is missing, or we just need to let go and say that just happened. Let's roll with the punches. This movie is funny and charming, and we do, and you should, and the movie earns it in a way that few subsequent Tim Burton movies will.
Regrettably, yes. I think it's a shame too, because I love the aesthetic that he brings, but it's gotten sort of, it's like a voice correcting on overproduced music now.
Yeah.
It's just
auto-tune.
Yeah, it's got a bit auto-tune now. It's sad. I'm sorry to say that, but that's true. Good for Danny Elfman to contribute his part here. I think it's anytime you can get somebody like that working on your movie, it makes a big difference.
And I think this movie's style was playing to his strengths. Absolutely.
Of course it was. The dun 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 dun. Like, it's got that pace. It's got the same charm that he can easily underscore. So yeah, he gets a shout out on that one.
Fair enough.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now, he's taken his love of fear.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
One step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie.
So in 1996, Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson came out with Scream.
Wow.
It was a huge box office hit. Aided, I think, by the fact that it had two big television stars in it. Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell.
Indeed.
Were both big on TV at that time.
Yeah.
Kevin Williamson is very much lauded for sort of bringing the sort of meta angle into the horror movie. The self-referential thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true and it's not. I think there's been a lot of movies before it that did wink at you and that did have a couple of lines. I think what Scream did was sort of make an entire movie almost about that.
Yes, absolutely.
The entire movie could be well encapsulated in a lot of ways with the opening sequence with Drew Barrymore.
Absolutely.
But there's much more to it. But I think that's the most famous thing about the movie in a lot of ways. And I think it's famous for good reason.
Well,
Gee, what did you think of Scream?
All right. Well, I remember seeing Scream when it came out, and I was not a big fan of the horror genre then, so saw it mostly through my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never really a good way to see a movie.
No, you miss things.
You do, as it turns out. So yeah, no, I remember. I do remember the story. So coming into it again now, it was maybe different, but I really managed to enjoy this a lot this time around, and I'm certainly I've seen so much more horror since then. It's just more palatable now, I guess. But the opening scene with Drew Barrymore answering her telephone and basically starting the chain reaction of events that takes place was probably the scariest scene of all of these movies, I would say. It was really gripping and tense, and you definitely felt the threat immediately. And after that point, it almost became more of a murder mystery for me, which I didn't mind. I kind of liked it. It was still fun to watch, but I guess I was a little surprised that it took that direction. Yeah, it was definitely a scary movie made for, or by, and from every scary movie that kind of came before it. Yeah. And it knew that going in and did an excellent job of sort of bringing them all together and summarizing it into one sort of nutshell. I'm surprised they needed 2, 3, 4. What is there? 5?
There's 4 now.
Oh, 4.
Yeah.
Okay. So
as of 2013, there is 4 Scream movies.
Outstanding.
Yeah, the opening sequence, all of the promotional materials had Drew Barrymore's front and center. So part of the flash
cover of the DVD case, yeah.
Part of the flash casting there was interesting in that she only lasts the first 10 minutes of the movie. Mm-hmm. Basically the entire opening sequence, she is being tormented on the telephone by this raspy-voiced, ghost-faced killer who is quizzing her on horror movies. And every time she gets a question wrong, there are repercussions. And this, of course, culminates in a very, very brutal death. And we don't necessarily see it coming or expect it at that point, or that, she's going to wake up and it's a dream and Drew Barrymore is going to be our main character. But
right?
No, Neve Campbell is our main character.
Right.
And we find that out after, Drew Barrymore's body is found hanging in a tree.
Yes, exactly. Yes, once they put Scream up as the title, we find out that she's gone. Great scene, though. Well done.
Wes Craven has made a lot of movies, most of them horror movies, and a lot of them fairly decent. But this is sort of his craft is in sort of at a high level in the 90s here. It seemed like he did a test run of Scream in one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Interestingly, the New Nightmare, he gets all meta. It's sort of about the cast of Nightmare on Elm Street being plagued by this spirit that they sort of partially unleashed by creating Freddy Krueger, right?
No. Yeah.
So, although that movie is like a disaster, whereas Scream is not at all. It's a huge success. Well, in the introduction, I called it like a 90s defining movie, and I think that's fairly, like, if you want to say what was the vibe of the 90s, check out the first couple of Scream movies, and you've got a pretty good idea.
Certainly.
There's a certain sort of viciousness to the violence, but a lightness to the characters for the most part.
Anything with a knife, though, when it's that close, when the death is intimate like that, it always seems more violent to me. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong of me, but for some reason, watching somebody even getting shot at an execution somehow is less painful to watch than somebody being stabbed.
Yeah. No, there's something really personal, even intimate about using a knife to kill somebody,
Yeah.
If you're using a knife to kill somebody, you don't just want to kill them, you want them to die badly.
Well, and you want to see them die.
Yeah.
You want to look into their face while it happens. That's fucked up.
we are introduced to Sydney and her band of high school types, who've got sort of Matthew Lillard playing sort of this amped up jocular type of guy.
Yes.
You got hottie Rose McGowan.
Yes, that's right.
Who maybe looks a little too old to be in high school, but that's okay.
Maybe as such. But, you know.
Her older brother, Dewey, played by David Arquette, sort of the bumbling sheriff. And this is sort of deputy, correct. This is sort of my favorite incarnation of Dewey. As he goes on through this series, the charm sort of starts to wear off a little bit over time. But I do really...
It's kind of like how it played out in real life.
Yeah, I guess.
Ouch.
But I really like that character, and I remember there's a sequence later on where we really think Dewey is down and out, and it was kind of like, oh, that's too bad, we liked him. The series of deaths that are happening in the high school seem to be somehow circling around Sydney.
Yes.
And she tries to sort of solve the mystery. Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, has got a book coming out. It's the anniversary of her mother's death.
Yes.
Not coincidentally, I don't think we have any surprises there that's going to come back to bite us.
Of course.
So she's got baggage, and she's being stalked by a killer, and it's basically a really bad couple of days
Yes.
for Sydney.
Indeed.
This is really ill-timed, too, because her father decides to go out of town.
On business, which he does. It seems
regularly.
very casual when he goes, so I'm assuming.
And her boyfriend, I can't remember the character's name, but it's played by Skeet Ulrich, is always acting sort of needlessly serious and spooky.
Yeah, it's like Billy or Bobby.
Billy,
or,
yeah,
is it Billy?
That's right. Billy sounds
Great.
good.
Yeah.
The characters are well enough presented and acted. I don't have any large complaints. I think that the Skeet Ulrich has sort of got the most mockable character with his sort of hyper seriousness and his bangs covering half of his face and whatnot. But that's just sort of the time.
Yeah. No, for me, I felt that his performance just seemed somewhat out from the rest, perhaps. And I don't know why it is, but Matthew Lillard, whenever I see him on screen, he always seems to be salivating a lot. It's weird. I don't know why, but I find it distracting. It's very. I know, it's such a weird thing to say.
Got a lot of energy. He seems to barely be able to keep himself bottled in at the best of time, and he's not asked to bottle it in at all in this. Stu is a very sort of wild character.
Oh, he's a wild man, and that's fine.
I think the character I most identified with, obviously, is the Jamie Kennedy character, who works at the local video store and knows horror movies like the back of his hand.
Well, he's the one that tells us the rules.
Absolutely. And he sees a horror movie set up, coming a mile away. He knows what's happening.
Yes, exactly.
He is sort of the representative of the horror-savvy audience, which is, what this movie was originally being served for. It ended up being for everyone. People lined up to see this movie again and again.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jamie Kennedy is who I sort of most identified with. The girls wouldn't pay him any attention, so he just had his VHS horror movies to keep him company.
That's beautiful.
And he does very clearly outline the rules of the horror movie in another quite famous scene.
Yeah.
And, why do, in horror movies, the women, if they see the killer, run up the flight of stairs instead of out the front door?
Yeah, I think Nev Campbell gets that line. But, Jamie, what does he say? No sex, no drugs, no
sin
booze.
Factor.
Yes, all the sins. And
don't say I'll be right back.
Yeah. Of course not. That's a death sentence. So...
But
good rules, though.
I've always sort of been of two minds of the rules. Yes, I mean, those are some of the obvious strokes of horror movies, but the typical trope is that the cast is going to get whittled down to 2 or 3 people at best. So, like in real life, if you want to survive, you just need to be running far away from the secluded party that you are at.
Absolutely.
Sydney decides to go to a party on Halloween, and the killers decide to choose this night to reveal themselves and why they're doing this and what personal facet they have to play with Sydney.
Right.
We talk spoilers here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just go into the third act pretty thoroughly.
Okay. Yeah.
After a series of decent set-piece murders, memorably there's the garage murder.
Yes, the
where,
garage door murder. Yeah.
Rose McGowan's gets her neck broken, and they kill the Fonzie. The Fonz.
No, right.
Never
one
like
of the
to see
Henry Winkler go.
Yeah, poor Henry. One of the things that this movie addresses well, I think, is a trope in a lot of the slasher movies, especially seen in the 80s. The killers seem to be able to be everywhere.
Yes.
Like, they'd just, impossible. Like, they could teleport.
Yeah.
This is particularly bad in a couple of Friday the 13th movies that I can think of, where Jason seems to just magically be in the right place at the right time, and then cut to another scene in a different location, and there he is again,
And somehow he went to White Castle in between.
Exactly.
Outstanding.
But this movie is not a supernatural movie. The killers are people, and the way they get around this is that there were two.
There are more than one of them. Yes.
And that's how I got duped in this movie. I was fairly convinced that it was Matthew Lillard. When I watched this movie, I figured Matthew Lillard's got to be the killer because he's just...
Yes. And for me, like, Skeet Ulrich just comes on way too strong as the killer.
They want you to think it's Skeet Ulrich.
Wow.
Right? Like, please, he's our killer. He's the red herring. And it turns out that he is, but he's just not working alone. Right?
Yeah.
It's a smart screenplay. It's
really
well
is.
acted. The comedy or the satire works, and the horror elements, I think, work. I mean, there's genuine suspense in the movie. I mean, maybe it's top heavy in that they never really top the Drew Barrymore opening sequence, but this movie is not boring.
No.
It did start the Scream franchise, and maybe it overstayed its welcome, but it certainly deserves the respect it gets.
Undeniably, yeah. No, I mean... Yeah, I don't know. It probably did something for the status of horror movies at the time again, too, I would think.
Well, it seems like a high-concept, low-budget horror movie is a fairly consistent lock, so...
Oh, jeez. Whoa, Jesus.
Did you see the way those guys looked at us?
Who wants to go skinny dipping?
No.
We got your friend!
They captured Allison!
Oh, it's the pancakes. You hate pancakes. I'm gonna make you something else.
What am I doing here?
Fell into the water. Dove in and rescued you.
We'll go find our friends. You should relax. Tucker and Dale are on the case.
What is this place?
It's just a cabin. It doesn't mean they're psycho killers.
Then why don't you go in there and talk to them?
All right. Maybe I will.
All right, let's drink some beer. We got to get the Canadian content up in this episode here.
All right then.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Yeah, this is an interesting horror comedy that concerns two
good old boys,
rednecky kind of characters.
Good old boys.
Played by Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine, who have recently secured themselves a dilapidated cabin in some obscure corner of woods, which they see as their summer home and new paradise.
Yeah.
It's a fixer-upper, but they intend to go out there, drink some beer, do some fishing, and
fix up this cabin.
Live their backwood life.
Yeah.
They are plagued by a group of university students who've come to the woods to camp.
Yes.
And it keeps on messing up their weekend because a series of misunderstandings these kids come to believe that they are killers and keep causing more and more problems for them, and as a result keep on getting themselves killed off. Such is the premise, the high concept premise of Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
That's right. Yeah.
What'd you think?
Alan Tudyk does a nice job of explaining it in one of the scenes where it's these college kids that keep coming in and they do this ritual group sacrifice. And I don't know, it's just so funny the way he explains it. But obviously these kids are just there to like ruin their attempt at just a vacation where these two guys can get away and try and fix up this cabin and just enjoy some time as bros. So yeah, I felt for them. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I thought it was like hilariously violent, considering the fact that there really wasn't a killer as such.
No.
And somehow horrible deaths befall these college kids. They're just fools, I guess. But it's fun to watch.
They get themselves so worked up, and they are so terrified and so amped that they find themselves, befalling horrible accidents repeatedly. Mm-hmm. And with each death, it sort of reconfirms with the surviving members that there's some terrible killers out there trying to get them.
Yes. Well, I do. I know it's the romance angle as well, obviously, but they managed to save, but what is interpreted as capturing one of the college girls from the group.
Crazy hottie, Katrina Bowden. If you've ever seen 30 Rock, she plays the crazy hottie on 30 Rock. She's very beautiful, and she's actually a very solid actress in the role. She's not just cast for her beauty. And she weirdly connects with Tyler Levine's character. Mm-hmm. She slips on some rocks and falls into the water, and they save her and take her to get medical care. But
however,
from the other kids' perspective, they basically see them hauling a body off to their little shanty in the woods.
Yeah. We got your friend!
Yeah.
Oh.
The point of view stuff in this movie is very funny and very well done.
Indeed.
We understand Tucker and Dale's point of view.
Most definitely.
And why they're exasperated and
absolutely.
They feel like they're being plagued by these college kids.
Well, they know they're being judged by them too.
Yeah. Harshly.
And it hurts them.
But we also see the kids' perspective, and at least until about the halfway point of it, we understand why they think what they think and why they make some of the bizarre decisions that they do.
Well, the first time they encounter them, he's trying to go and hit on Super Hottie.
Yes.
And he carries over a full-size
size
with him in order to engage in the conversation after he's been given the advice to just laugh at whatever
Smile
she
big
says.
and laugh, yeah.
Well, that's going to end badly every time. Yeah. I don't care who you
are. I'm going to say this, and it's not both a good and maybe bad thing about the movie, but it's a one-joke movie. This is a one-joke movie.
It is.
It's a funny joke.
It's a great joke.
And I think it's really aided by having Levine and Alan Tudyk from Firefly as our leads.
Well, I mean, most Joss Whedon... I've seen a lot of Alan Tudyk and Joss Whedon stuff. So.
Yeah. But I think that on the wrong hands, these guys could have, been a little bit. They are a little bit cartoonish, but you kind of you get to know them and like them fairly quickly.
Absolutely.
There's no sort of arm's length with these guys. We sort of we get them.
Yes.
We maybe wouldn't want to live their lives, but we get them. And
yes, we do.
I think the other thing is that I said we sort of understand the kids' perspective until about the halfway point.
Yes.
The movie needs to sort of get itself a genuine villain, and it rather suddenly produces one from one of the kids.
Yeah, it's kind of inconsequential. I mean, he's really, it really was just a mode of convenience having him as a scapegoat for this, for all of the horror that takes place. They just needed somebody, somebody's got to go to jail at the end of this, or at least be blamed, and they must have, a killer. So one needs to be produced, and they basically choose the douchiest kid of the group, which kind of works out great. So yes. I was okay with that.
Jesse Moss is the name of the actor.
Well, I don't have anything against him. It's just the character he played.
Yeah, I believe, I'm just looking here to confirm, actually, as I speak, that he was in Ginger Snaps way back in the day. His name is Jesse Moss, and his character is he's always been obnoxious throughout the film. And
he really has.
all of a sudden he sort of goes off the map crazy. They faintly connect this to some plot that they vaguely set up earlier on, but for the most part, if Tucker and Dale can't be a threat, but they still have to sort of be proven exonerated and made heroes of, someone's going to have to take the fall.
We need our villain.
And he just sort of steps into the light exactly when the movie needs him to, and it doesn't necessarily feel 100% natural to me. But this is me looking pretty hard to find something to complain about, because the movie is mainly concerned with keeping a smile on your face, and I think for the most part it does that.
It does indeed. Actually, one of my favorite deaths partway through the film is the fellow who's running through the woods after Tucker comes out after trying to do some work chainsawing.
Yes, and he saws into the nest.
Yes, exactly. That's beautiful. Of course,
or whatever they are.
He's running wildly, waving a chainsaw, swiping at bees, which of course these children don't see, so they run away. And in watching him in fear, one of them impales himself on a fallen tree.
Yes.
And there's a moment of recognition that character has, because he
realizes
sees Tucker actually overtaking him while they're running and swinging wildly still. And there's that moment of recognition right before he goes, and I just really enjoyed that. There was something just delightful about it. That, oh, shit.
Yeah.
But it was too late for him to tell his friends.
Yeah.
Others could have been saved right then and there, once again. There's lots of opportunities to save these college kids along the way. They even try and use common sense at one point and sit down and explain each other's side of things. Like... It's attempted, which is kind of surprising, because so many horror movies piss me off because nobody attempts common sense.
Horror movie logic, as I call it. Let's split up so they can't get us so bad.
Exactly. So here we have an actual attempt just to communicate clearly, which solves all of the problems and just cuts from beginning to end of movie, but... obviously it fails.
Yeah, and they sort of stand united. They want to go try and rescue their friend from these crazy rednecks.
Right, exactly. They saw them haul her body away in their canoe. So that's... I can understand why you'd want to recover that person.
There's an interesting element of cruel fate, I think, to this, too. It's sort of a Final Destination sort of thing.
Yes.
Where it's like this Rube Goldberg series of events to lead to, a horrible accident.
Yes. Well, I mean... when one falls, I think the next has to in this movie. So it's kind of fun though, because they have to come up with different ways for these kids to kill themselves in Tucker and Dale's eyes and be killed by Tucker and Dale in their friend's eyes, and that's it becomes a difficult balance somewhere around the wood chipper.
Did you? Yes, the wood chipper. Did you want to extrapolate?
Well, no. I just, I guess, one of the college kids decides he's going to tackle Tucker into a wood chipper that he's running in order to get rid of some of the fallen lumber.
His timing is just off.
And his timing is off. Tucker avoids the diving tackle, and the kid dives headfirst into the wood chipper. There's no saving a person when they dive headfirst into a wood chipper.
No, it's all over. No. But his friends sure try like hell to save him nonetheless.
Well, I mean, Tucker and Dale first really try to wrestle him out of there, but it's
a losing battle.
It's unfortunate.
Did you buy the romantic angle between Katrina Bowden and Tyler Labine? No, I didn't necessarily buy it either.
No, I mean, it's a tough sell.
It is a tough sell, and I'd hate to be shallow-minded, but I mean, I liked it that she sustains several blows to the head throughout this. And, everything in me says once she recovers from the concussion and she realizes that, she's with this bizarre redneck, she's going to run back to the big city.
Yeah, but is this guy a decent fella? Yes.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I think that's all the relationship needs to be. I mean, I know that they have to push the love angle there, but... I mean, there are other reasons, obviously, beyond the surface why that relationship clearly wouldn't work out. So, I mean, I know that we find out later that he doesn't even like fishing. But nonetheless.
It's Canadian made. The concept holds together for the most of the part of the running time of the movie. The performances are solid. I'm a big supporter of Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say about it?
I mean, a lovable couple of hayseeds. They've got my support. Vote
It's
Tucker
nice to
and
see
Dale.
a couple of positive portrayals of rednecks. You know?
Yeah, indeed.
What is that, cuz? That's an alien, bruv. Believe it. When I landed in the wrong place, though, you get me? The wrong place.
Well, lads, you discovered a species hitherto unknown to science. He kicked his head in.
Yo, check it. More what? Them things.
Lovely fireworks.
Nah, mate, it's an alien invasion.
Of course it is.
I'm killing them straight. Let's get tooled up, blood.
Quite sweet, really, aren't they?
So we're going to jump to the other side of the ocean here and take a look at writer-director Joe Cornish's Attack the Block.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same production team, I think, that was behind Shaun of the Dead. Notably absent is Simon Pegg, but Nick Frost shows up in a small supporting role.
Yes.
And the vibe is similar in that they're sort of tackling a genre type piece. This is a little bit maybe more science fiction than horror, although it's got some good scares to it.
Indeed.
And the aliens do look very aggressive and nasty.
They do.
Basically, this is about a bunch of ruffians.
Yeah,
these kids who live in a tower block and basically make their living robbing people.
They're like the 14, 15-year-old gangsters in training.
They're junior gangsters, pretty much. They're gangsters in training. That's well put. And basically, the movie opens with us seeing them robbing what turns out to be someone who lives in the same block with them.
Yes.
I usually don't like scary movies where the bulk of the cast is like kids or super young because I have a hard time feeling jeopardy for them.
There's a certain PG-ness to watching something when the characters are that old. Yes.
And that's what's interesting, I think, about Attack the Block, because it's sort of set up in the vibe of a Goonies sort of bouncy kid comedies, but the kids are pretty hardcore criminals when we meet them.
Yes.
And unlike, the Goonies or, that ilk of film, not all the kids get to make it home tonight. There's a body count to this, and it's not.
There is.
It's not a PG affair necessarily.
No, it's a rated R film, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's got some red.
Aliens start raining down on the sky, and including in their little apartment block and complex, and they decide
around their apartment block. It seems
the little gang is sort of mixed up with the criminal mastermind lives in the tower and has a drug operation there.
Yes.
They have their own stresses to deal with him before the aliens start falling from the sky. The kids are basically want to catch these things and sort of defend their turf.
Right.
And in the meantime, the mastermind, the drug overlord, is feeling like he's getting threatened. His power is being threatened.
Absolutely.
And he needs to do some sort of show of force. And he doesn't realize the stakes of what's happening around him.
No, he manages to remain completely oblivious.
All of the kids, and I say all of the kids, are solid in this movie. There's not one sort of saccharine, overly cute or wooden performance. I bought all of these kids
as
completely.
Totally tough little street kids. Yeah. They were hard.
And you got to like them. It's an interesting presentation because at first you're not sure. Are we liking these guys, or is this movie going to be about evil being punished?
Well, I think it's hard though, because right out of the gate they hold up this woman, and it is at knife point. Like these are 5 armed kids
doing everything they can to terrify
this woman and take her belongings.
Yep.
And I don't know, it's hard to I found it kind of difficult to like them despite those actions. Because they seem to, like, idolize this high-hat guy that the character was called, this guy that lives in the penthouse at the top of the block who runs the gang, basically.
Yeah.
They really seem to want to get in league with this guy. That was the lifestyle they were choosing. And it seemed kind of shitty.
Well, it's certainly not the lifestyle that I would choose, but there were things that I could find to latch onto. Like, in their own way, they were quite loyal to each other. One of them gets mixed up with where they're caught with the police, and the kids go to great lengths to try and save him from the cops. When they find out that the woman they robbed her from the tower, they tell her if they'd known that she lived in the tower, they would never have bothered her.
Yes.
And when the aliens start, landing in cars and causing mayhem, they defend their neighborhood, where everyone else is just sort of hiding in their rooms. This group of kids arm themselves and defend them. So I did find ways to get in. They were alleys in, but the movie didn't seem overly concerned with making us like these kids. They were just sort of presenting them to us.
That's true.
It's an interesting little mix, because it's sort of like the kids from, like, the fourth season of The Wire. Basically, they live sort of tough street level lives where the easy answer, it seems, is crime. It's much harder to work the system and somehow make an honest living or build your way out. It's just it's the harder path, and it's a path that your peers will punish you for choosing in a lot of ways. And then sort of seeing those types of characters in the context of this sort of fun alien invasion movie was different. I hadn't sort of seen that before. And I gotta say, the creature design on those aliens was fantastic.
Full marks.
The way they move and their sort of weird glowing teeth.
Yes.
And they're, like, very intimidating right away. As soon as you see them, you just want to be in a different place. They're bad news.
Yes. Undeniably. Yeah, no, they did a tremendous job, I thought, with... I'm assuming it was just a CGI effect, but...
No, those were guys in suits, and largely... I'm sure some of it was augmented with CGI, but those were guys with, like, sort of the stilted running suits.
Yeah.
Extend their arms so they kind of run like gorillas almost.
So they had that gorilla pose to them, but then, of course, they were... And I liked that they were, like, as black as pitch.
Yeah.
Like, just...
I think that's where the computer augmentation added it to it. Yeah.
Terrifying, though. Like, that's... just little elements like that they included in the aliens made them more threatening, for sure. And, the glowing teeth were kind of cool, too.
I really enjoyed this movie. It's quick, it's efficient, it's like, I think just under an hour and a half long. It's a lot of fun. I think that it might have hurt itself by the level of violence that it included. If it was maybe a bit more of a PG affair, it might have found a broader audience, at least on this side of the ocean. But
probably domestically as well for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a respected movie. People tend to like Attack the Block. But it's not like it was a huge monster hit or anything, like, at least not here.
No. Well, not that I'm aware of, anyway. But it's I certainly can't. It's not that I didn't enjoy the movie. I thought it was a pretty fun watch, and I do like the alien invasion movies as a rule. That's just hilarious for the most part. So maybe more predisposed to like this one out of the gate, but there was lots to like about it. I maybe didn't. I didn't get close to any of the characters, the kids that you might have done if it was a more PG movie. But that was okay. It was still interesting to see how they dealt with it.
I don't think I realized how much I was actually digging the kids until they started killing some of them off. It's funny, too, because it kind of pulls its punches. We see a few peripheral characters get taken out of the game, but the kids kind of stick around for a while, and then all of a sudden we lose a couple of them, and I was like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, points there. It works, and it makes the stakes higher, but it's that weird sort of mixed bag. Is this movie for kids? Well, no, it's a little too intense for kids.
Yeah.
Is it a movie for adults? Well, I think so, but at times it might be a little goofier than a lot of adults are looking for.
Well, and as an adult,
not this particular adult, but some others, you know.
I don't know. Like it's hard to take 14-year-olds seriously in that role sometimes. Like I know that there's a lot of really hard, toughened kids out there, and that as part of a gang, I can see how that would be very threatening. But at the same time, watching it on as a movie, it's maybe difficult to get just believe it entirely.
Yeah.
I don't want to believe that these kids at that age are actually doing it.
But that's the real world too. That is the case, I guess.
I guess
there's some brutal truths in the sort of silly movie.
Well, even just the harshness of the language that they use with one another. And watching them sort of coach these even younger children who are 9 years old, they claim.
They're in the junior gangster school.
Exactly. Like, I don't know that training system exists is kind of upsetting to see. I don't know. It made it difficult to see them as heroes, I guess, for me.
Oh, I got a little bit of a kick out of those kids. What was there? Something in Mayhem.
Yeah, I can't remember what the other one was trying to name himself, yeah. But they had these code names that they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, they were definitely, when they were on screen, comic relief, sort of like Nick Frost.
Yeah.
There was also another character, sort of the nervous yuppie kid who's sort of come into the bad neighborhood to score and is over polite to everyone and over nervous and bumbling. These are sort of like they're fine characterizations, but their roles are largely just comedic.
Yes.
Whereas the kids are largely, heroic.
Mm-hmm.
They got a few zingers and one-liners. There's that one little loudmouth kid who gets chomped on the leg, who's
right.
You kind of like him, but you kind of want someone to smack him in the mouth at the same time.
Yes.
Please stop talking.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is a likable sort of ragamuffin kind of sense to some of these characters, there's no doubt. But, there was a barrier there for me, I think, in some ways. I don't know. Still don't know what to think about Attack the Block.
I guess it may be lower on the list than people would expect from me, just because I guess the wink aspect of the list may be not attested to as much. I mean, there's familiar templates as far as a group of kids banding together to overcome an obstacle. I mean, that's certainly something that...
Where were the adults, though? Like, why were all of the adults just hiding?
I think that they established pretty quickly that either the parents were not involved or not there. The kids you're saying, I'm going out, it's like 11 o'clock at night, I'm going out, and they're grabbing their sword and they're leaving. And they don't even sort of show the parents, they just hear them say, all right, later.
Yeah.
They seem like uninvolved.
Okay.
That's why the kids sort of develop their own family outside of their little homes.
Right.
And definitely the leader, we find out, is living all on his own.
I guess I just felt at times like there was no one else involved in this alien invasion.
Right.
And that seems unlikely.
Everybody was just hiding in their rooms except for these kids.
In a London suburb.
Yeah.
And no one notices but these 5 kids. And so they're the ones that have to go out and kill them all. And I mean, it's just I didn't get...
Well, they also sort of established the kids, the first alien that they encountered, they killed readily,
yes.
And it was the female of the bunch,
right.
And so a lot of the kids smelled like this.
They were covered in the female pheromone.
We find out that these creatures are actually pursuing them.
Yes.
So it's only people peripheral to them who are seeing these. Most of them ending up being killed. Hence the cops and the gangsters. I mean, it's very convenient, especially Nick Frost is sort of this pothead who's watching a lot of nature documentaries, and a very fortuitous documentary comes on that sort of gives them insight into what their adversary might just be like.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie's fun enough that you don't mind that stuff. Mm. In another movie that would have maybe bothered me, but I was having a lot of fun. There's similarly a thing that was really heavily set up where the kid says they're at a sort of pedestrian crossover, and he's going to jump from one point in the walkway to another. probably 15 or 20 feet up in the air over concrete. If he missed it, it would be a bad fall, you know. And his friends talk him out of it. And as soon as that scene happens, you know that there's going to be a scene where he is in being pursued, and he forces himself to make that jump. And of course, that scene comes.
Yes.
But again,
sometimes I got a sense that it was almost made by kids for kids.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there were these really red scenes.
Well, that's sort of why I kind of put it in the wink-wink category, because I do think it is funny, and deliberately so, and I do think that it still works as a sort of thriller, scary, sci-fi movie. But it is sort of aware of everything that came before in it. I think it's sort of conscious of it. It's not anywhere near as overt. It's certainly not Scream in that regard. But I don't know. It sort of fit into this bunch of movies. It's sort of well-balanced, you know, horror and comedy.
Well, it's just funny because one of the things that all of these movies had in common was that they all, like, either college campus or high school kids or whatever it is. It's always a gang of kids, but this group of kids seemed particularly young by comparison to the rest of these movies.
Yeah. But they didn't get treated differently than you would see in a different, like... that's why I said when I was surprised to see some of the kids get killed, it was just like, it didn't feel like that kind of movie until it decided all of a sudden, no, we're that kind of movie. So, I don't know, bravo, I liked it.
Everybody ready? Get the show on the road!
Doesn't even show up on the GPS. It's unworthy of global positioning.
That's the whole point. Get off the grid, right?
Hello? I'm thinking this thing doesn't take credit cards.
Sign says closed.
We're looking for, what's it called?
Tillerman Road.
To get you there, getting back. That's your concern.
Oh, this is awesome.
Whoa. No way.
We're going to talk about Cabin in the Woods from Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard. And I was saying that it's an almost impossible movie to describe to someone if you don't want to spoil it for them. You could say a bunch of kids go to a cabin in the woods and mess with something that they shouldn't, and they get killed. Or they get attacked by demonic things. It really does sound like Evil Dead. But this has a lot more layers to it than Evil Dead. It's, not to take anything away from the original Evil Dead, but this is a little bit more high-minded. When you walk away from watching Cabin in the Woods, every other horror movie you could watch, if you wanted to, could also be Cabin in the Woods. If that makes any sense. They're basically justifying all of the weirdness that you'll see in all these horror movies, why people make weird decisions, why there's always types, why we see the same patterns play themselves out over and over again. And we see them play themselves out again here, but we're allowed behind the curtain as to why things play out this way.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting number. What did you think of Cabin in the Woods, G?
Wow. Well, as you say, it's incredibly difficult to summarize. I think there was a lot of things that I just loved about this movie. I liked that it was two sides of the story in the way that a wink-wink movie should be, or at least the way I imagined a wink-wink movie should be. It was nice to be let in right out of the gate, too. I mean, it's nice to be able to start a movie and just know that you get to play both sides, and this one did a perfect job of doing that. And for somebody who doesn't watch a lot of horror movies, it's in the same way that Scream does. It sort of helps explain the genre to you as it plays out. So it's almost like horror movies for dummies, but to write the dummies book requires a shit ton of knowledge, and that's what Cabin in the Woods kind of manages to succeed at for me. It's just able to find that perfect balance.
The cast is led by Kristen Connolly. She was in the Netflix series House of Cards, and she's in a horror movie directed by Barry Levinson called The Bay. I think she's really good in this movie. She had to wait a couple of years to see her performance come to fruition, because this movie kind of got caught up in post-production nightmares, and that the distributing partners went out of business for a while, and then they got sold to another group, and then it was going to be retrofitted to 3D. And in the interim, happily, one of their actors, Chris Hemsworth, sort of came up in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
And is playing Thor, and it was in this obscure Avengers movie.
Yes.
And then you've got some Joss Whedon sort of regulars. Fran Kranz was in Dollhouse, a TV show that he did.
I think she did a turn on...
That's a he. That's the pothead character.
Right, yes.
And then Amy Acker is someone that we've seen in some of Joss Whedon's TV shows, isn't it, as well? And Jesse Williams sort of round out the sort of cast of the main characters that are going to the cabin.
Yes.
But we also get to see the background characters, and most of what we see in the behind the curtain stuff concerns Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins.
Right.
We sort of start the movie with them driving around in this little golf cart in some facility somewhere, sort of bantering, bitching about their lives. It's kind of nice to sort of we're behind the curtain before we even know we're behind the curtain. We sort of keep cutting back to these guys, and we see as the film progresses, just how involved they are.
Right.
And how the manipulation starts from the very beginning. The second those kids pull away from those dorms, there's a guy on the roof with a radio saying they're on their way. So we know that there's strings being pulled and there's puppet masters. And slowly throughout the story, we find out, what this is all about and why this is happening.
Right. Yeah, it's not an easy thing for them to achieve annually, I can imagine. But it's an interesting... I don't know how much to give away.
Well, we throw spoilers, I say. And again, with a movie like this, I would encourage somebody who's listening right now who hadn't seen the movie to watch
this movie
before you hear the spoilers. If you have seen the movie, by all means. But I do think that it will detract somewhat. I think that you'll still enjoy it. I think you'll still have a good time watching it. But if you can do it pure, that'd be great. So,
yeah, indeed.
You can listen to a podcast whenever you want. So
that's true. It's just very regrettably for me, I managed to catch about 15 minutes of Cabin in the Woods before I watched it, and I didn't even realize that that's what I'd seen.
Right.
And it was about the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty large spoilers.
Yeah, I really wish I could unwatch it. Especially having gone back and, I didn't even realize that that's what I was watching at the time, but as soon as it started to come together for me, it came together for me far too early, and it was unfortunate in that way. But totally kick-ass nonetheless. Lots of fun.
There's some interesting reversals, I think, in the script here, too. Whereas usually the pothead character, or whatever, the fool, as he is referred to in this story, is sort of a victim, right? Like we learned in Scream, drugs and alcohol is sin factor. You don't do that. It's bad. And in a lot of ways, the Fran Kranz character kind of becomes one of the more heroic characters of the story.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting. And the character that Chris Hemsworth plays, the hero jock character, who's typically sort of dumb and bossy. He's sort of the leader because he announces himself the leader. But no, this guy's actually decent. They actually have to rig the game to make him, behave stupidly.
Exactly.
I think that one of the least credible things in the whole script actually is the gas that they would spray them with, which would suddenly make them change their mind.
Yeah, yeah. their pheromone gases and their things.
Adjusting the heat, the temperature in the room, or locking the doors, having that sort of outside control. I understand.
Sure.
But like a spray that shoots out of a vent that makes you completely defy logic.
Well, yes.
And then
well, subvert your own way of thinking.
Absolutely, like instantly. But it was basically, I think, thrown in the idea to support this concept that a template has to be made, and part of that template is gratuitous nudity.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that template is, there are types. There's sort of the virginal, sort of heroic girl,
Absolutely.
And then there's the sort of slutty, not virginal, heroic girl.
Yeah,
there's
we like her.
Like I said, the sort of strong leader, jock character.
Right.
They're all types.
There's the scholar.
The scholar. There you go. Yeah. So they're all types, and people don't tend to fit into types, and the movie acknowledges that.
Yes.
They're sort of being forced. They're square pegs being sort of squished into these round holes.
That's right.
Which is another interesting angle of the screenplay, which already has so many interesting angles at work. You just gotta keep smiling throughout.
No doubt.
I also, of course, am pleased that of the myriad of options they had to choose from in that basement of foul toys, that they chose a toy that brought out redneck zombies. Zombies are very popular these days, but it was a good win for me.
Yeah. That was. I think that was actually one of my favorite parts of the story, was that they got to choose their fate.
They had to choose their fate.
They had to.
They were manipulated into making the choice.
But it was acknowledged as one of the crucial moments in this ritual, this ridiculously elaborate ritual, but this ritual that needs to take place every year. And it's just that, to me, was really interesting. It just seemed fascinating to me. And then, of course, to see their sort of, I don't know, if you've seen Cube, right? So their cube of warehouse of villains that they have just sort of ready.
Yeah.
Love it. That's so
cool. And I guess
what an interesting idea.
And maybe that can sort of justify the gas that makes you change their mind, because they have this arsenal of creatures that they got from the old ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sort of H.P. Lovecraft angle of the story. We have to have blood sacrifices, or else these ancient gods are going to reclaim the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I guess, the Bradley Whitford characters and the Richard Jenkins, all the people behind the scenes, are quote-unquote doing heroic work, but that heroic work involves these innocent teenagers being blood sacrifices for us to survive.
That's right.
In order for the world to keep on spinning, this has to happen.
Mm.
And again, the meta angles to this are rich,
Oh my goodness, yeah.
When we watch a Friday the 13th movie or a horror movie, I mean, we go there to see people die. To an extent, we are, at least for the first 2 or 3 reels of the film, in a way, cheering for the villain.
Yes.
We want these kids to die.
Yeah.
And in this movie, we need them to die. And if you're in the perspective of the people who work behind the scenes, you do want the kids to die.
Yeah.
So the behind the scenes people are, for the most part, keep a detached eye,
of course,
on them. Whereas we, as the audience members who are got full access to them, don't.
No. Well, yes, and they acknowledge that with, of course, all of the betting and so forth with among the staff.
Who's going to go first? Because what are they going to pick for their death?
I totally understand needing to do things like make exaggerated gestures to sort of compensate for guilt you might be feeling over your actions. You know what I mean? That's, I think, something people can be, connect with on some levels.
You mentioned the sequence in the elevators when our group gets whittled down to 2, and they find an elevator and hotwire it to go down.
Yeah.
They have no idea what they're going to encounter, and they can't imagine what it is they do encounter, which is basically glass room after glass room of different monstrosities. And the amount of imagination for each one of them are good. And there's a few, nods and tips of the hats to other horror movies if you know your genres. And for these two characters to see that, to realize, the scale of what they are potentially up against is it's a great sequence.
It really is.
And then to see the creatures then unleashed and turned upon, the puppet masters. Yay, good for them, they're escaping.
Totally satisfying.
But at the same time, they're undoing the world, right? And that's where, I guess, as we're moving towards the end of the movie, one of the questions that I will ask, they find out what this is all about, that this is it's not a crazy cult who think they have to do this. This is the real deal. And every continent on the world does this. And as long as there's some blood sacrifice for the old ones, it'll work. But by some cruel twist of fate, every other place has failed, and it's down to them to get this done.
Yep.
Again, we want these kids to die, or do we?
We need them to.
We need them to die. And basically, our protagonist says, if this is what it takes for the world to keep on spinning, then it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument is that maybe she's wrong about that. Maybe the altruistic ending would be to sacrifice herself and let the world continue to spin, as opposed to be defiant to the end and cause the end of the world.
Right.
And, I mean, either way, she's dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she could die for something, or she could,
Right.
I mean, I didn't completely get it, but I mean, it was a very bold ending to the movie, and they're not going to fuck this up with a shitty sequel, because how could they?
Done.
But
and I mean, maybe that's the way it had to finish.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the way it had to finish. You felt too much for these characters to let them go, even in favor of the rest of the world, because we didn't get to know the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody we got to know in the world of the movie was gone already. That's it. I mean, there were no other survivors. Like, in the facility, the staff is gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing left. So, if it's only them,
Presumably this is an underground secure facility, and with all the creatures that have been turned against them,
there were no survivors.
Sigourney Weaver shows up as sort of the head of the whatever agency is in charge of sacrifice to ancient
7?
gods. Yeah. And she plays a very similar role, in a way, in a much sillier movie, Paul, as sort of the head of sort of a super secret organization who's pulling strings around the way.
Yes.
Kind of an interesting dual. She could almost have the same name, if not for the fact that I believe that she gets killed in both of those movies.
She does indeed. She does indeed. But she wears similar pantsuits in both. And actually, I'm pretty sure they just choppered her from one set to the next.
Yeah.
And then because it's the same helicopter that she arrives in both movies. I'm sure of it.
I guess we feel differently about seeing these people getting killed in the government facility. I mean, we kind of got to know and like Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins, but you still, they still seem kind of cold about the job that they're doing. Now, this detachment may seem necessary for them to just, be able to get through their day, but they watch and make and create real life horror movies. I guess it would be worse if they enjoyed it and they got off on it, but it wasn't that you wanted to see them dead, but you felt differently about them dying than you did about the kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was... you certainly didn't... Well, I didn't anyway have the same degree of sympathy for them, maybe. Because they seemed like villains for a lot of the film. That's true, but... I don't know. That was going to be difficult to reconcile one way or the other, I think.
There's surprises around pretty much every corner of this film. The screenplay is razor sharp.
Wow.
Like I said, once you've seen Cabin in the Woods, if you want, every other horror movie you watch, especially if you look at some of the ones from the 80s and 90s, are Cabin in the Woods. Anytime something stupid happens or a performance seems weird or inconsistent, You just have to imagine there's people behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Pulling those strings, making
and
it
that's
happen.
why that chick took her top off for no reason.
Right.
And that's why they decided to split up, you know, and that's, you know...
Why they went up the stairs instead of out the door.
Front door. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. For genre fans, it is a feast, and though it may have laid on a shelf for 3 years, or however long it was, worth the wait. Alright, so that's 6 wink horror comedies reviewed. Gee, it is now your task to rank these 6 movies from your least favorite to your most. I found this a pretty hard list to rank, and in some ways I'm glad that you have to go first. Sucker!
Well,
what was your least favorite and why? If that's the right way to put it with this crop of movies.
Yeah, no, and I mean, as you said, this is a great crop of movies. I enjoyed them all. As I said, I watched them more than once. So, and some of them, like obviously Beetlejuice, I've seen many times.
Yeah.
But anyway, to begin the ranking, I tried to do this in reference to Wink Wink as much as possible. For me, I put Attack the Block as number 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a hard time with the age of those kids for some reason. As
those young ruffians really rubbed you the wrong way.
Well, they just seemed too young to pull off gang member in a threatening way. I understand how they could be perceived as threatening, and I understand how they are threatening in actuality.
Right.
But for some reason on screen, it just didn't sell for me, and I just didn't believe it the way I wanted to. That being said, I thought it had probably the coolest effects with their monsters.
The creature design
The
is
creatures
awesome.
were fantastic. It was totally a fun watch. I wasn't like, it didn't upset me or anything. This was the flaw I needed to find in it in order to put it at the bottom of this list.
Fair enough.
Not easy thing
You're
to do.
endorsing all of the movies. You're just being forced to rank them by your cruel sadistic
That's
grandmother.
right. That's right. So, yeah, I had to find a problem that was the easiest one for me to find, I guess.
Fair enough.
I'm not happy about it, but that's the way it ended up. Number 5 was Beetlejuice. Again, a movie that I'm passionate about, is 5th on this list. And I think it's just because with reference to Wink Wink, maybe it was a bit outside the boundary. A little bit. But less so than I felt than Attack the Block in some ways. It's hard for me to believe that that's where it is on this list. But that's where it is.
There it is.
Beetlejuice, number 5. So, next actually, I have Tucker and Dale versus Evil at number 4. I really, really enjoyed this movie, but as we pointed out earlier, it really is a one-joke movie, and it's a funny joke. It's a great joke, and I think it's as well executed as it could be over the course of the 90 minutes or whatever it is. It was really, I really enjoyed it a lot. It was probably more my favorite than what I've put at number 3, which is Night of the Creeps.
Okay.
I think I probably am more likely to watch Tucker and Dale again.
Okay.
And again, it's like repeat viewings, whereas Night of the Creeps it's a good show, and it's number 3 on my list here. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Night of the Creeps, number 3. Yeah, I just it was fun from beginning to end, and it was made with love by somebody who loved horror movies. and
you can tell. You can just feel
you could just feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through the screen, and that made it number 3 on the list. Number 2 on the list is Scream. Scream, excellent. It's a great show. I thought it was good what I saw of it in the 90s, I really enjoyed, and what I saw more recently, I enjoyed even more.
Now without finger vision, it still stands up.
Well, yes, it's actually better, but yeah, it was good then. It's still good now in a lot of ways. It pulls off the genre well, and obviously it winks very well at you as well. But nothing winks more than number 1, Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah,
there's just no doubt about it. It's covers all the angles.
Our lists are not dissimilar, but they are not so similar as to be any awards given out today.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
But I don't think any fights are going to be breaking out over these movies. And if there's any flaws in this movies or the list, it's just some of the selections, maybe like you said, in the wink wink category. But I wrestled with it, and this is where I ended up. Number 6, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Wow.
It rides a lot on charm. The premise is solid, but it might have been more solid as a short film, stretching it to a feature length. I don't know. It worked enough, and that had everything to do with the cast. And like you said, I mean, it'll work. It'll have some rewatchability. It's just in this crop of movies for me, I had to put one on the bottom, and there was Tucker vs. Dale. And I hate to put the Canadian-made one there too. That's kind of hurts my feelings, but there it was. But I didn't feel right at putting Beetlejuice on the bottom, so Beetlejuice is number 5.
That's exactly why Beetlejuice is number 5. Exactly why Beetlejuice is 5.
Because
that's funny.
Warts and all, I just have a great affection for this movie. It's not a horror movie, though. If you haven't heard of Beetlejuice, or for some reason this is your first experience in Beetlejuice, do not expect to be scared when you watch Beetlejuice, but do expect to be entertained and charmed. And I love the stop motion effects, and I love, Catherine O'Hara, and, just the cast is uniformly strong. The story is crazy and imaginative. I always love Beetlejuice, and, maybe it belonged on a different list. I don't know, but it's ranking at number 5 today.
I just like to say that when I was in school, I had a Beetlejuice lunchbox.
That makes you cooler than me.
It was very hard for me to I had to not put it at 6. There was no way.
That brings me to number 4, which is where I ended up putting Attack the Block, which I enjoy quite a bit. I think it has acres of charm. I didn't necessarily find the kids irredeemable. I think that they started in kind of a bad place and sort of slowly got warmed up to them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I thought that was kind of an interesting place to take, whereas most movies would go out of your way to make you like your protagonists. This movie sort of makes your protagonists earn it for some reason. But I love, like I say, the alien design is great, and I did laugh out loud several times. And this movie goes down easy, like it's quick and fun and entertaining, and it's just a good time. So, big love to Attack the Block. Number 3, Night of the Creeps.
Naturally.
Again, this is just a stir fry of a horror movie. So just take his favorite elements of science fiction and 1950s sort of serial killer on the loose and zombie cinema and body campus comedy, and just put it in a blender and somehow managed to come out with this really quick 90-minute fun, gory movie. And with lines like the good news is your dates are here, the bad news is they're dead. Go to
Zing.
If you haven't discovered Night of the Creeps and you're into the horror genre, it's worth seeking out.
Absolutely.
And we're agreed too that number 2 is Scream. It's very well made. It might be the high watermark for Wes Craven in a lot of ways. As far as success and popularity, definitely. I mean, there's this and there's the first Nightmare on Elm Street.
Sure.
And he's made some good movies in between, but these are definitely, I think, the high watermarks.
Fair enough.
And he would continue with the Scream franchise. Williamson would not write all of them, but Craven continued to direct, 3 sequels to this.
Wow.
And if, it warranted 3 sequels, or maybe that's an arguable point, and that it's still sort of pop culture relevant, it's worthy. It's worthy.
Yeah.
It's weird to put such a new movie at number 1, but I totally agree that Cabin in the Woods goes number 1, both in the category and just in concept and execution.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember I looked at some of the special features of this, and they talk about a scene where the camera was to pan on a bank of monitors, and on every screen something horrible was happening. All of the creatures are coming through the facilities, right?
Yeah,
so they're looking at the security footage.
Yeah.
And on paper that seemed like, just nothing.
Right.
But when it comes to filming that shot, you've got basically every horror movie you've ever seen happening simultaneously in one shot of the movie. And that movie itself is every horror movie ever made simultaneously because of the rules of Cabin in the Woods.
Right.
This movie could give the writers of Inception a nosebleed. I think that the Cabin in the Woods, it sets a high watermark. And,
it's impressive. It really is.
I usually like to let a movie age for a few years before I overlaud it, because sometimes the warts don't sort of immediately present themselves. But for now, I heartily endorse Cabin in the Woods, as I do all of these movies.
Yeah.
And we were close, man.
Indeed.
We were very
close. That's curious.
And that's episode 17 of Rank and Review, wink wink. And I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to write me and let me know how I'm doing with these podcasts, please do so at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail. Would love to hear from you. My name is Larry Parsons. I am your host and random Canadian. And thank you for listening to my podcast.